Hey everyone! If you've been following the closed beta news and footage of Genshin Impact, you probably have already seen a few articles and comments comparing it to Nintendo's Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Probably due to the video I did before this test phase regarding my thoughts and expectations of Genshin Impact, some players have DM'd me to ask for my views on the matter. First of all, I'd like to mention that I did not receive a beta key and didn't really follow the closed beta news. I have been informed by other players that upon registration, we're supposed to at least receive an acknowledgement email, but I never saw one. I got some friends who knew nothing about Genshin Impact to also sign up so that they could pass me their beta key if they happened to beat the odds. They did not receive any acknowledgement as well. I pretty much closed the chapter in Genshin and, am just gonna wait for its official release. So I had a little catching up to do, and I was curious to see how bad the reception of the game was. I found two articles, one calling Genshin Impact China's blatant Breath of the Wild knockoff, and the other calling it a brazen Chinese lookalike. The first one shows a few comparisons, which I appreciate, so we'll look at those first. Okay, this one, I'm gonna say, does not give me the impression of a copy. The Genshin one looks more like an Ultimate Evasion from Honkai, whereas Link in Breath of the Wild is rapidly draining his stamina to run away from the attack. I can see how it's similar, but at the same time, it's pretty distinctly different. Next, the wall climbing. This definitely looks like the same thing. On this point, there's no denying the similarities. It basically looks like they're doing the exact same thing. So we'll just move on to firing a burning arrow. Visually, this looks way too similar as well. While shooting fire elemental arrows is extremely common in games that have archers in them, I would say the effects are what really looks similar, and it could have been worked on a little. Last comparison in this article, swimming. So the first game that came to mind when I saw the swimming in Genshin was Dynasty Warriors. Kingdom Hearts 1 also had swimming like this, so does GTA and Pray for the Gods. Pray for the Gods also has something like a stamina component and a wall climbing mechanic like the one we saw earlier, similar in some ways but not quite the same. It's interesting to see that the article did not include the gliding, which is the mechanic that came up most often in my conversations with other players. So yeah, I'm just gonna mention it right here, because when I give my thoughts on this, it's probably gonna come in. It's worth noting that both articles seem to quote the exact same guy. Several other articles all hang on to this same quote as well. If this game manages to survive, or God forbid, go viral, Chinese gaming companies are dead beyond salvation. One Ubisoft Shanghai developer says, "They will die in terms of securing future funding or talent. We have to make some real originals." But here's the thing. Earlier in one of these articles, it states that the open world take on Zelda has already served as inspiration for other games, and quotes Ubisoft's Gods and Monsters as an example. I click on Gods and Monsters and immediately see this. Gods and Monsters has over-the-top combat and a Breath of the Wild style glider. I search up Ubisoft news and find this article describing the upcoming game, which among other stuff says this. All of these abilities, along with jumping, attacking, climbing, and gliding, drain Phoenix's stamina gauge. Also, it offers a variety of gameplay through combat, puzzles, and traversal. Don't get me wrong here, I have nothing against Ubisoft, and I'm not trying to defend anyone or accuse anyone of anything. I've not seen any gameplay of Gods and Monsters, and I'm sure it won't be the same thing as Breath of the Wild. For starters, Phoenix, the main character, uses a fiery phoenix, no pun intended, to glide, whereas Link uses a hand glider. Anyway, given how widely successful Breath of the Wild is, it's hard for games to set themselves apart. What I'm wondering here is, where do we draw the line? I'm just gonna leave that question for the comments and move on to the post from Genshin Impact's project leader. So there's this app, which is called 好游快报, which literally translates to Good Swim Quick Explosion. I know, it's weird, but I just thought that'd be funny. Anyway, it works like the Play Store, but is a lot more interactive and allows developers to communicate with their players. The post is of course in Mandarin, but thankfully I speak 3 languages, so I'll do a rough translation for you guys. I won't read the entire thing, just some main points for me to share my views on, but you guys can scroll through the video if you want to read the entire thing. He begins by addressing everyone, thanking players for their support. He then tries to relate his experiences and the growth of their production team, and mentions that they had been planning to produce Genshin since way back. They did not have the knowledge or means at the time to create and provide a full open world experience, and stuff that I mentioned in the previous video were also mentioned here. Stuff like how Honkai Impact 3 was a significant upgrade from Honkai Gakuen 2, and that the next step wouldn't involve Honkai Impact 4, but a new game altogether. He goes on to list the open world games that he's played and mentions his experiences with Creation Kit, which is a modding tool for Creation Engine games. At this point, they realized that their experience at developing open worlds was no better in 2017 than it was in 2015, the year they started developing Honkai Impact 3. When version 1.4 launched on April 2017, however, they were surprised, I'm assuming at the reception of the Yae Village, and felt that they had gotten somewhere in open world development. Even though they were still far from their goals, it was a start. They then set a target timeframe of 3 years to get the open world up and running. He mentioned that miHoYo's mission is to bring a better gaming experience and make it easily accessible to the masses. Labor Day 2017, he gets his hands on a Switch and gets to play Breath of the Wild. He then moves on to list the various sources of inspiration for certain aspects of Genshin. And we'll move on to his short Q&A. So what kind of game is Genshin Impact going to be? Will it be a standalone or an MMO? So I know I said it's an MMO, apparently it's probably not. The gist of it is that Genshin will share certain aspects from each genre, but will be neither of those. Even though they have the ability to turn it completely MMO, they would like players to have a world to call their own. I see where they're coming from. Like, sometimes in MMOs we log in and there's just this period of lag and then boom, the map is flooded with players. So the multiplayer aspect would be the ability to invite other players to your own world, but theirs is still gonna be unchanged. I'm guessing this is in regard to the story. Like, if you and I were both at chapter 1 and I go over to advance the story in your world, you get to chapter 2, but when I return to my own world, I'm still at chapter 1. I could see how this provides a new experience. I mean, you know, it probably feel like a new game plus, because if I go over and help you, then I'm gonna get EXP and I'm gonna be at a higher level, right? Anyway, lastly, he mentions that PvP will not be the focus of the game's development. Also, he mentions that we can be immersed in a friend's world. Maybe decisions made in the story will affect things like landscape, or maybe we'll even be able to build stuff. I'm guessing this is gonna feel kind of like Minecraft or Life After. Next question, he talks about the urban development. So TVAT or Taivat, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, which is the world Genshin is in, is supposed to have 7 major cities, and Mond, the city of Wind, is only one of the 7. The game will only be at 30% completion at the time of its official release, and is expected to take several years to complete. So we'll see the story gradually, kinda like how World of Warcraft updates, maybe. He also says players will get to experience Li Yue on the next phase of testing. I have no idea what that is. It might be a character, might be the next city, so I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's the next city. But if you guys know, do let us know in the comment section down below. Next question. Ooh, interesting. There's gonna be construction. Hey, called it. Alright, next. Will Genshin have high-spec requirements? So, like he mentioned, miHoYo aims to make their games easily accessible, and they've been making modifications to the Unity engine. Well, due to the nature of the game, there's only so much we can expect out of it. I do believe that miHoYo will be able to optimize it on many devices, but we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, when will it be on Android? In the next phase of testing. This is like the question that everyone's been asking, so wait for closed beta 2. Last question. When will the next testing phase begin? Here's something that confused me. He said closed beta 1 was supposed to be a closed test. I mean, it's already called closed beta 1, how much more closed can it get? Maybe he meant that it was originally an alpha test, but they decided to collect more data and ran it as a first beta instead? I don't know. Second phase, of testing will be available to more players. I still don't think I'll get in, but whatever. It will also be open for a longer period of testing, but will adhere more strictly to closed testing principles. I don't really know what that means either. He ends this answer by saying that they are reading all feedback and will not publicly address some of them because they will be fixed as soon as Closed Beta 2 is released. That's really cool, but he did not answer the question. Well, anyway, he then ends with a quote from another player, and yeah, that's pretty much it for the post. So they probably could have held off on the mechanics that look too much like Breath of the Wild. Maybe let players run around, and once the game is known for its unique aspects, then start updating all those functions. I mean, same for the gliding and that fire arrow. Maybe start with a city of a different element that could display Genshin Impact's unique features, and make that arrow less flashy, or change it to a wind or ice arrow or something. But then again, no matter what is shown, if people want to take it and find something to compare it against, they're definitely gonna have something to say about it. I'm not saying that the points brought up are not valid. I feel that those articles, maybe a little too strongly worded, but they do make a point. They do look similar as we had reviewed earlier on. Still, I said this to players who asked me about this, even before reading this post, and that is, Genshin is still in its earliest phase of testing. They're not going to show every single detail right off the bat. What if they have a good idea and someone else copies it? I'm not going to jump the gun and judge this game at the stage it's in, but I hope miHoYo will be more mindful of the perception of players and increase their sensitivity towards the similar aspects their games share with other open world titles. As for the current similarities, I spoke to a friend who plays way too many Nintendo titles and got his views on the matter. He said that Breath of the Wild has a physics engine that Nintendo spent 5 years to develop, and that sets it apart from any other open world title. The core gameplay of Genshin Impact and Breath of the Wild also have many major differences, like how Genshin focuses on switching members while Breath of the Wild only has Link. The contribution of the physics engine to combat is also something that cannot be replicated easily, if at all possible. Since I did not get a beta key, I apologize for not having any footage to show in comparison, and also taking footage from other players or creators would require their permission, and seeing how hard it is to obtain a key, I would do the same and ask other players to not re-upload my content if I were to get one. Aside from them being able to claim the video or get it removed, I simply feel that it's incredibly disrespectful to steal someone else's content and upload it as my own. But I digress. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments on what factors or criteria have to be met for a game to be called a copy or a clone. And as always, thank you for watching. If you gotcha, do it responsibly, and this has been MG.